Today I'm going to talk about the fallacy of linear planning and the reality that we follow a non-linear path throughout our life. So as a young bloke, like most young blokes, I was sort of fed this belief that we go to school, we get decent grades in primary school, we move into high school, and then from there we get good grades and we go off to university, or in my case go off and do an apprenticeship where you go from apprentice to a tradesman to a foreman, okay, and then maybe you buy your own business, maybe you don't, and then you create wealth. As you go, you buy a house, your house gets better, you get a better car, so forth, until you get to the point where you retire, and then you enjoy retirement going fishing or whatever it is that you choose to do. And if you go to university, you graduate, you get a job, you move up through the corporate hierarchy to a position where you obtain a better job title, financially you move in a linear path, things just continue to move in a set direction, progressively increasing until again you retire and off you go. But the reality is that that's not how it goes. Like, we follow a non-linear path, and this idea that we have a linear trajectory throughout our life is setting us up for failures. So the reality was, in my case, is that it didn't really follow that path anyway. So I did primary school, went into high school, I did okay. At a point in high school I kind of lost interest in the education system. From there my grades pretty much leveled out, dropped a little bit. I wanted to be a professional athlete. I didn't have what it took to be a professional athlete at that point in time, so that career ended there. I wanted to go into a certain academic stream. Okay, I didn't have the grades for that because I wasn't really invested in education, so I went and did a trade. Finished my trade. It wasn't really what I wanted to do, so I joined the military because I was just looking for an opportunity to buy some space or time until I worked out what I wanted to do, and I was interested in trying to see what I could do in the military, or if I had what it takes to, or took to get into the special operations. So I went down that path. I thought I'd do a few years and then I'd move on to something else. During that time, somebody decided they'd fly a plane into a building. Okay, that disrupted my whole world. Again, I took a very sharp turn from there, and then 16, 17 odd years later, I'm now transitioning out of the military into an academic stream. So it's a 3-year transitioning process I've got now, which is quite chaotic. Okay, I've gone backwards in a lot of areas, but it's just a transition period. Okay, I have to go through this necessary friction to move on to my next path. So as I've gone throughout my life, I've accepted that there's transitions. They're not always comfortable or smooth, but they have to happen so that we can move on and continue our progress forward. It's not always linear. Okay, we sort of go forwards, back, up and down, however you want to look at it, but our path is non-linear. Okay, so this idea that we're going to follow a linear path and not get disrupted from us is setting us up for our own trauma and our own issues around not understanding that it's going to happen and not being prepared when it does happen. So some of the research that's looked into it has shown that we spend around about 50% of our life in these transition moments. Okay, so they can be short-term transitions, they can be long-term transitions, but around about half of our life is in the friction of transition. So if we're unwilling to accept that that's going to happen, then we're going to spend half of our life being uncomfortable about what we're going through. And it's also reported when they codify these things that around half of the friction or our transitions or these chaotic circumstances that happen within our environment are internally generated. So they're choices that we've made that have turned out to be really poor choices, or they're decisions that we've made that have created friction, or they've created issues that we have to deal with. So half of them are from our environment that we don't get to choose, like someone flying a plane into a building, a bushfire, a flood, a natural event, these sort of things. And the other half are things that we've decided to do, or decisions that we've made. So for me, I decided to start a family, leave the army, and now I'm in a friction point based around those decisions. Okay, for me, I maintain control of my life, so that's not a problem for me. I'm not concerned. I know I'll get through it and I'll move on the other side and be better off for it. And one of the things that helps me through these transition points is that I know nothing is going to last forever. Everything only has a certain point or a certain duration that I have to see it through, and then it finishes. I move on to the next thing. So even though I'm in a 3-year transition at the moment, that 3 years will end at some point, and then I'll move on to something else. And then on the other side of that, at some point there'll be another period of discomfort, and that will end, and I will move on to something else. So every time I've been uncomfortable, things have been really difficult, I know that there is going to be an end. It's going to end at some point, and I'm going to be able to move on. Just as much as all our positives or our highs also come to an end, so I know that I enjoy those when they happen, and then I work through the friction when I have to do it. And if we can understand that our path through life is non-linear and accept that there's going to be ups and downs and we have the ability to get through it, and it's going to end and we can move on, then we're going to have a much better life over the duration of our lifetime. We're going to be much more fulfilled, much happier, and we're going to see things differently, and we're going to tell our own story to ourselves a little bit more positively. So I hope that helps understand a little bit around thinking in terms that your life is non-linear and being prepared for those phases where you're going to go through difficulty or challenging circumstances or friction. And the next video I present, I'll talk a little bit more around this and start talking about approaching things with curiosity and the power of asking questions over setting goals. So until then, I hope you took something away from that, and I look forward to the next one.